in Module 1, you were introduced to the idea of levels of measurement, the method by which we are collecting certain types of data. And so, as a super quick refresher, remember that there are a total of four categories. We have nominal, we have ordinal, we have interval, and we have ratio. And again, just to reinforce something I mentioned in that during that module, I will never ask you to distinguish between interval and ratio. Oftentimes, you're going to see them represented as a singular category, interval slash ratio. So, what I'm going to show you all now is the way that we present the data is going to differ depending on what type of level of measurement of data we are working with. So, this slide I'm going to show you right now represents what you should be considering when representing nominal data in a frequency table. So here's our table. We have the same two columns like we had in the previous data table, in the previous frequency table. On the left column, we have the possible responses that someone could make, and on the right column, we have the frequency that each person made given a particular category. So frequency distributions of nominal data have two columns. The left column indicates what characteristic or category is being presented. Characteristics presented, categories of analysis. The right column indicates the number of people in each category. And at the very bottom, this final row at the bottom is a representation of the total number of people who participated in this particular survey. So notice that I didn't necessarily present to you all what question was being asked for, when collecting this data. Part of our job as social scientists is ideally to make sure that we are being as thorough in how we are representing our material so that our audience has everything they need to know when reviewing our data. In this case, what I'm trying to convey is that if this were part of a research the results of research, I would want to include what question was being asked. In this case, I left it out on purpose because I wanted to demonstrate that at times we are able to infer a little bit about what question might have been asked. In an ideal scenario, we would have the opportunity to review the results such that we are seeing what question is being asked. Looking at the responses that are being provided, it's very likely, as you can imagine, that the question being asked here is, what is your race? What is your racial identity? Some form, variation of that kind of question. The possible responses that people gave back in to this particular question include the categories of Asian, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, Black, Native American or Alaska Native, white, two or more races, declined to answer. And again, as a reminder, this very last row is just representing the total of everyone who participated in this survey. Remember that this frequency column, this F column, is just telling us how many people responded to a particular category. So, looking at this first category, for the number of people in our survey who responded with Asian, we have one person. Two people identified themselves as Native Hawaiian or the Pacific Islander. 10 people identified themselves as Black. Three people identified themselves as Native American and Alaska Native. 30 people identified themselves as white. 12 people as two or more races. And 8 people declined to answer. One thing I want to mention here is that when it comes to research design and how it is we determine which questions not only do we want to ask, but also how we ask them. I mentioned this during our first module on what is behavioral statistics. You may be looking at this list and wondering to yourself, well, why are there certain categories that are not represented here? Are there too many categories here? Does it make sense to ask, or rather, to provide a category that gives two or more races? Our responsibility, as again, trying to get y'all to think like social scientists. Our responsibility is to have a rationale for why it is that we've created our survey in the way that we have, asking the questions that we're asking in the way that we're asking them. More often than not, especially in social science research, when it comes to the ethics of conducting research, it is appropriate to give your participants uh, an out, so to speak, a way that they can choose not to participate rather than not participating. And I hope that makes sense. So instead of presenting someone with categories where we don't offer them a decline to answer choice, someone may say, I don't want to answer, and we've got, we're just missing data. If we don't provide a decline to answer option, maybe people will feel forced to select themselves into a particular category that they don't necessarily identify themselves to. So I say this because decline to answer is often a category that we want to include as a matter of helping people retain a sense of comfortability when they're participating in our surveys. So keep that in mind. All right. So now let's move towards thinking about frequency distributions, but more specifically to how we relay data for ordinal and interval ratio data. Notice that these two categories, ordinal and interval ratio, are um, brought into one, kind of description about frequency distributions. That's because it applies to both, right? So, ordinal and interval ratio categories are always arranged. I shouldn't use the term always. Always is a terrible term to incorporate when it comes to social science research. Uh, Often, let me. Although it says always, when I upload this PowerPoint, I'm going to change that because I need that to say can be arranged in order from their highest to lowest values, and then I would, be able to drop out that last little blurb about this is not the case. What is the rationale? What is your reasoning? Does it make the most sense for your audience to list them from a top down order or from a bottom up order? Right? The decision is really yours. The concern of the researcher should be the readability of their research findings. Keep that in mind. Again, if we don't have the question here in front of us that was asked to collect this data, we can infer that we're very likely asking, what are your educational goals? Where you have 14 people who are describing graduate school as their goal, 6 people for a professional degree, 29 people for a bachelor's degree, 7 people for an associate's degree only, 2 for certificate of vocational training, 3 for updating skills for work, 7 that are unsure, and again providing that opportunity for people to elect, self select to not respond to a particular question. Okay, so I think that's yeah. So this is it for this first video. Make sure that when you are reviewing this material, I always encourage students to have, know that the PowerPoint is available to you, and also keep in mind that these videos are available to you to help you, get a little bit more of context as to why it is that I'm showing this material in the way that I'm showing it, expanding on it, make use of everything that's available to you. All right. So again, this video was really just to introduce you to the idea of organizing data and more specifically frequency distributions.